Welcome to Twilight Time's special edition of director Paul Schrader's Hardcore. Very interesting film. One that I enjoyed very much when it came out, as much as one can say enjoyed a movie that's about such a depressing subject matter. And I'm joined here by my colleagues, Paul Scrabo, who is a film historian, producer, technician, and engineer, and also Eddie Friedfeld, film historian, and also an author of numerous books related to the entertainment industry. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks, Lee. This was Paul Schrader's second directorial effort. It follows Blue Collar. And if you're a fan of that film, I certainly am, you may spot a few character actors from Blue Collar. Ed Begley Jr. in a very brief part, and actor-producer Leonard Gaines. There seems to me two color schemes in Hardcore. Either subdued and lifeless for George C. Scott's normal world that we see here, and then overblown and fake for his trek into pornography. Eddie?
Well, I agree with you. What's interesting to me about this film, which I also enjoyed, is that it starts out so beautiful and pristine in this middle American lifestyle and snow and sledding, and it just spirals down into darkness and despair, and we get this glimpse of a really
John Milius,
dark...
executive producer, of course.
Yeah.
He's a very, very big name from that era of filmmaking. It was such an exciting era of filmmaking, too, because the late 60s through the 70s, you had these wonderful established directors, Howard Hawks and Alfred Hitchcock, still making movies into the 70s, along with these young Turks like Paul Schrader and Spielberg and Lucas and Scorsese,
and
all
Coppola.
coming up. So this wonderful, wonderful intersection, if you will, of very talented younger filmmakers along with the old masters who they revered so much.
Now at family gatherings, we've all seen people split up and go to another part of their house and sit and talk about politics or sports. You know, they're really getting into it, having like these heated discussions. And we notice here that Scott's friend and family do get into heated discussions about the world of religion, about the rule of God.
You can talk theology, John, but I go back to the Bible.
Schrader wrote a first draft of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And in his version, the Roy Neary character, the character that Richard Dreyfuss played, was the biggest skeptic. I think he was a military person. And then when he was convinced there were UFOs, he and his wife traveled around the country trying to convince everybody about the UFOs do exist. Spielberg preferred Roy Neary to be more of a dreamer. As we see in the finished version, the film, he's playing with toy trains and playing with his kids. He's got that gleam in his eye.
It's curious because Schrader, of course, has had experiences with alternate versions of films, especially the Exorcist prequel that was so controversial much later in his career. But here we have, someone said when we were discussing the film prior to the commentary recording, was that here we have a situation in which we have this God-fearing conservative family, loving but strictly run by a matriarch, but yet it doesn't take the obvious road, you might think, and denigrate these people or make them look silly or foolish. It's just their lifestyle, and they're very devout in their faith. And one might expect along the way this to be mocked or to take some moralistic pot shots at it. But I think refreshingly, Schrader refrains from taking that obvious road. Now, of course, Schrader himself has said that this movie reflects part of his own upbringing. Isn't that correct, gentlemen? That he had sort of a Calvinist
He did have a
upbringing.
Calvinist background. It's just interesting in terms of the philosophy of this type of strict Calvinism, especially against the 70s era of new opportunity that Calvinism relies. One of the precepts is predetermination, that your life is ordained, and the outside world, or in particularly this dark world that the characters go into, the polar opposite world, is completely the opposite, where nothing is ordained. You don't know what's going to happen, although you know that in that world, anything that's going to happen is not going to be good.
I mean, this was done at a time when the film industry was really taking advantage. It was shot in 1978, 79, released in 79. It was a period of great excitement in the film world, because the breakdowns of self-imposed censorship that had watered down so many adult-themed movies up until the release of Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. That was the film in which Jack Warner said, I'm not going to cut it, I'm not going to edit it, screw you, I don't need you or your production code seal of approval. He was right. They didn't need it, and the freedom in cinema exploded with that in 1966, and it got, much more progressive in terms of what you could show in terms of sex, drugs, violence. Some would say not for the better. I happen to think it was, because we can finally see adult-themed films like this that would have been unthinkable, 15 years before or so.
This is also the post-Vietnam, the post-Watergate era, a time not the best or the most optimistic time in American history. At the core of this film is what was prevalent at the time, the generation gap, about one generation not understanding the next generation, and everything coming out of there. This is Dick Sargent, post-Bewitch. He was the second Darren. And this is an interesting role for him, because there is nothing comedic about this role. I think Dick Sargent was playing more light comedic roles, and this is a very, very somber role, but a good role for him.
Oh, it was great to see him do this. It really was.
Playing off against George C. Scott, who you should mention is just was one of the greatest actors of his time, theater, television, film, and I mean this was Patton. This was somebody who played Paddy Chayefsky effortlessly.
Well, it's funny. Scott's career had an interesting trajectory. Started out as a character actor, a very highly acclaimed one. His first movie was in the late 50s, The Hanging Tree. Made an impression in that opposite Gary Cooper. And he really didn't start from the bottom and worked his way up, actually, because he started fairly much at the top with high-profile supporting roles. Anatomy of a Murder, which he got an Oscar nomination for. And, of course, by the time 1964 came around, he was the star with Peter Sellers of Dr. Strangelove. He really gave one of the great comic performances of all time in that. A lot of times it's overshadowed by Sellers in that film with his incredible work. But Scott was adept at playing comedy, slapstick, high drama, as he does here. And he's an interesting guy, one of those really tough guys from the last generation that probably never set out to be an actor. They had survived the Depression, World War II, and kind of drifted into it. And he was a cantankerous person by all accounts, known for drinking and sometimes abusing his wives physically. But there's no doubt about it that he was one of the great talents of his time.
I think this is very important, because this is a very restrained and understated role for him. It's kind of less is more. What's interesting about this scene and the scene before is he's in the custom furniture business. Everything is built to last long and quality, right, but exactly the way he wants. My way or the highway kind of guy.
And this is how he does it as a professional. He uses her words to change her mind. He doesn't argue with her, but he has her bring up the word overpowering.
Maybe we could bring more of that shade in, perhaps a panel.
No, that would be much too overpowering.
Overpowering, that's the word I was looking for.
Mr. Van
sexist, repressed, and you get all of that. This is where Schrader's genius comes in, both as a writer and a director, because the economy of how he gets that all in 2 scenes.
So you have to know
exactly who this guy is. He is not going to budge an inch. He believes what he believes, he knows what he knows, and he does what he does.
Yes, and this exposition is very important. It's something that's lacking in films today, which feel the audience is so restless, you've got to cut to the chase almost immediately. Films don't even have credits anymore, for the most part, okay? Because they think our attention span is so short. But if this film were made today, my guess is that they'd say, well, you've got to start this thing off on a provocative note. You've got to rewrite it. You've got to show us what's going on in the porn industry to start. And then you'll get some provocative shots in there and then cut to this family's experience. But, Schrader takes his time in an era where you could take your time to get to the main storyline.
To this point, you almost want to be part of this family. They've showed you Christmas, they've showed you turkey, they've showed you sweet and upstanding and loyal, and you haven't seen the termites in the building yet. You haven't seen the decay. And that's important to set this all up, because you want to see a fall from grace. You want to see a spiral, because if it's about setting up characters who have something to lose and then lose it. Because if a character has nothing to lose, you don't care all that much if significant things happen to them.
And this was filmed in Grand Rapids, Michigan, correct?
Yeah.
He didn't attempt to do this in some Hollywood studio. It has a feel of authenticity to it. He immersed himself, Schrader, into a society that he understood very well based upon his upbringing. This girl on the right plays his daughter. Her name is Isla Davis, and for whatever reason, she's never had a screen credit before or since this, is my understanding. And she did a fine job in the movie, I thought. So, at the time, this movie, like some of Schrader's movies, were very unappreciated in their time. This movie, because of its provocative subject matter, was dismissed by some people as being very exploitive, denouncing something while he's exploiting it. And I guess there's some truth to that, no doubt about it. But it doesn't negate the fact that it's a powerful film, it's a realistic movie, and it's a very effective one on an emotional level. And I think you're right. It's very nice to see Dick Sargent, cast against type in a dramatic role, an intelligent role. Very difficult for sitcom actors to get those roles after you've been associated with.
Yes, because
very difficult.
Because directors are concerned that the audience is going to have a
distracted.
perception.
So,
yes.
To Schrader's credit, and maybe it was the casting director who were always among the most neglected contributors to major films. But whoever came up with the idea, it's an inspired choice and a refreshing one that they gave him that opportunity.
And there's some interesting irony here, if that's the word, because you have Dick Sargent, who, similar to Bob Crane, who they called could have been another, had Jack Lemmon qualities about him. And in fact, Schrader kind of revisits sort of some of this area again later on with Autofocus.
Right.
The story of Bob Crane.
Right. A severely underrated movie by Paul Schrader. And, I will say that we're not just drifting here unintentionally. We do want to discuss Paul Schrader's works intermittently as we watch this film unwind. It is also my understanding, I should say, that Paul Schrader is providing his own commentary track on this release. So we're doing the best with the facts we have. But if Mr. Schrader contradicts anything we say, then, of course, we have to defer to him. But we will be talking about various other films of Schrader's during this period.
You reminded me of the Woody Allen scene in the Annie Hall scene where somebody starts talking about Marshall McLuhan on
McLuhan.
And Woody Allen brings him out saying, "You know nothing.
You know nothing of my work." Well, I don't want Paul Schrader to visit my house and say, "I heard your commentary track. You know nothing of my work." we're very reverent
Especially
of his work.
considering that he was the one who created the Travis Bickle character in Taxi
Well,
Driver.
it is rather.
You don't want that guy
It is
visiting
rather
your house.
odd to be having a secondary commentary track about a director's movie when the director's on his own commentary track. But that's the great thing about Twilight Time. They really pour on the analysis, I think, to the delight of movie lovers.
Well, it's about celebrating great films, and that's what we're doing. I mean, we're providing an extra layer for real fans.
And we've said one of the takeaways here is to see Dick Sargent in such an interesting role as this. And this film could only have worked, in my opinion, with an actor who can show quiet rage, can grow and grow, and have a sense of danger. And that is George C. Scott.
The contrast to watch him raging in a film like Patton, or making these amazingly intense, evocative speeches in a movie like The Hospital, where here the character is not articulate, the character is stoic, the character is reserved. So you get insights into the character through very passive-aggressive, very indirect expression.
We've interviewed everybody there, and nobody around there had ever seen it before. But is she
At present, there's no indication of any violence. Let's hope she's just a runaway.
Something very wrong here. Kristen isn't the type of person to just up and leave.
I said, let's hope she's a runaway. See, if she's a runaway, then at least she knows where she is. And that's better than a lot of these other kids, because some of them, they're not going to show up for years, and some aren't going to show up at all.
And, Scott, he was a leading man. He once in a while would top line a film like The Flim Flam Man, 1967, what have you. But it was only with Patton in 1970, with his immortal Oscar-winning performance, Oscar-refused performance, I should say, that he really became a sensation. He was always respected on the stage, but he became a sensational screen presence. But he really didn't have many big box office hits. The Patton and the Hospital were big hits. He got an Oscar nomination for The Hospital, but he sort of drifted into middling roles. Once in a while, he'd do a great film like Islands in the Stream, or a very good movie like this. But he had a very checkered record. Now, here we see Peter Boyle. The connection here is with Schrader's Taxi Driver, which he wrote the screenplay for.
And what's interesting is we've been talking just via just a few paragraphs. We're only about 16, 17 minutes into the movie. Everything has changed already.
Right.
Almost in an instant.
Right.
We're in a completely different situation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
and here we have the antithesis of Scott's character. He's dealing with this rather disreputable character, this seedy gumshoe.
Smarmy, yeah.
And certainly they live in two polar different worlds. But of course, Peter Boyle did have a key role in Taxi Driver, which was 3 years earlier, which was written by Schrader. I guess you could say Taxi Driver was Schrader's breakthrough movie as a Hollywood talent. Prior to that, he had written the script for a very underrated movie called The Yakuza, directed by Sidney Pollack from 1974. Excellent screenplay by Schrader. I think it's one of the most underrated movies of the 70s.
And I think he broke a record for being paid a high fee for the screenplay.
Yeah, and it's a very, very good movie, very intelligent. His films tend to be very intelligent. Many of them were not appreciated at the time of their release. I always thought that Schrader tried to talk up to his audience in the sense that he respected his audience. He respected the viewer. He tended to write very intelligent scripts with very complex characters. And of course, his trademark was excellent, realistic dialogue. This movie is written very well. I mean, considering that the Scott character, Peter Boyle character, is so extreme opposites, the dialogue between them seems very realistic and believable. You would think the direction might flow that way between two very opposite men. And this is touching. I mean, there can be nothing in the world worse than not knowing the fate of your child. He doesn't know where she is,
and
it's all about.
What's worse is to know that he may not have really known her at all. And that
Right.
this is somebody who wanted to be a good parent. and somehow is starting to realize that he wasn't, that shakes the core of who he is.
You know, every parent, and I'm a parent, every parent makes mistakes, makes, in retrospect, gross misjudgments probably, but all of us, or most of us, really think we're acting in the child's best interest at the time, and that's what this man is doing.
And that's the redeeming part of this character, that while flawed, and that's again to Schrader's credit.
Do you think that's why in this scene he's handing a gift? Maybe he's trying to make up, like, I'm forgetting people's birthdays or gifts.
That he's trying. That he's a potentially a prisoner of his own upbringing and his own conventions, and he's starting to have self-examination because something has gone really wrong. And to this point, he has not. He has totally believed in his way of life as the right way, from his worship to his family to his business. Everything was going
It's
smoothly.
very believable because, I mean, in the interest of full disclosure, I am not a religious person. I guess I'm an agnostic/atheist, but I can identify that this is a very difficult thing that this man is going through. Faith tests people all the time. You try to live your life as a good, decent person, like the Holy Book says, and you have to start questioning yourself. Why is this happening to me? Why does this happen to good people? And the only answer anyone can give you is that God works in mysterious ways. Well, that's not very satisfying to people, even people of faith. They may pretend to accept that, but they don't. And he's not accepting it at this point.
And
he
it
just
also
can't say, I'm a good guy, my family's good, I made mistakes, but I'm a decent man, therefore I know nothing's going to happen to my daughter. Even the most devout religious person is not that naive. He knows she could be in terrible danger, and it's a puzzle to him because he thought everything was great. And, you know, this happens in life all the time. There are marriages that go sour where one person thinks they were in a wonderful, loving relationship and the other one thought it was a living hell.
You have to have faith.
Would you? Could you?
And even beyond faith, the issue here is when somebody realizes or starts contemplating what they may have done wrong, not as a practitioner of any religion, but as an individual. What have I potentially done wrong that hurt my child?
That's right.
And that's such a pure, devastating analysis, realization when you go through that and realized you could have done more, you could have done better, it was within your control, and you chose not to. And this all could be your fault.
It's all second guessing, and Scott's, you know, now he's going to be in a fish out of water scenario.
Just the
sure.
visual contrast of this scene is so interesting because George C. Scott looks impeccable in a tailored suit, and here's Peter Boyle in the wrinkled sport jacket and no tie with the top button closed, which was very not stylish.
Well, again,
at that time.
I mean, we had done a commentary track on Twilight Time's Tony Rome, and we said the dearth of believable-looking character actors in today's movies. You just don't see guys that look like Peter Boyle. They wouldn't get past the studio gate today in any kind of major role, let alone to become a big star. Boyle had become a big star in 1970 in John Avildsen's movie Joe, in which he played an extreme right-wing fringe guy, like an Archie Bunker type, who is appalled at the youth movement. Now, here we have a very disturbing scene. I mean, we can just imagine what's going on in this man's mind, how shocking this would be, and how much this must have replayed itself in real life, you know, especially in the age of the video revolution, which certainly brought pornography out of grimy theaters into people's homes. Well, everybody you see in a porn movie is somebody's relative, and the girl looks very scared, and we can kind of see that what she thought was going to be an exciting adventure is turned into a nightmarish experience, that, you know, she's probably being coerced in some way into doing this. And, you know, the idea of this poor man watching this on spool in this theater. I think Scott is great here.
Turn it off. Turn it off. Turn it off.
That shot of Scott was used on some of the advertising posters for the campaign, along with the rather sensationalized tagline, "My God, that's my daughter." And he never says it in the film, I don't believe.
And at the crescendo here, film running out, the lights go brighter, and you hear the sirens. It's all so perfect.
Scott is superb in this scene because it looks precisely like we might imagine a man like this having to endure this humiliation, this worry, and it would be devastating for any parent to see that, but it would be especially devastating for a man of devout faith and a Calvinist background like this.
What he's watching is literally a message that he failed as a father.
Right.
And it's just like your life flashing before your eyes when you're about to die. That's what's going on here.
And the Peter Boyle character, I guess you're not really supposed to peg him down. I don't know if he's basically a person wanting to do good, just a crummy guy.
He's shady, yeah. He's an opportunist.
I'd like to think that as the film progresses, I think he does care. I think he just wants to do the right thing, but that's what's very interesting about the character.
His moral compass is flexible.
Right. But you think as the film goes along, I agree with Paul, you tend to think that there's some grain of genuine human emotion in this guy who, even by his harsh standards, he starts to feel some empathy.
And sometimes, I don't know if it's accident or design, but as they end this scene, one of their first meetings, as Scott leaves, I believe Peter Boyle grabs his arm, like in Friendship. Believe one of the last shots in the film, we'll have to find out to remember, I think Scott grabs his arm.
Right. Well, growing up in Jersey City, right across the river from Manhattan, Manhattan was my playground when I was young, and as a teenager, I would frequent these porn palaces all the time with my friends. And it was sort of a perverted Disneyland if you were coming of age as a boy in those days. You thought it was terrific, because you had naked women. You put a quarter in a slot, and the window would go up, and there'd be a woman in front of you. You could watch all the porno movies you wanted. So this was, depending on your point of view, this wasn't a bad thing depending upon where you grew up. But of course, the porn industry does have a lot of victims in it.
And now that church music has now gotten a little bizarre now.
A little, ominous. Goes from being comforting to ominous. Schrader is another guy who eschews studio sets in favor of actual locations. And I think it ends a great deal of realism to his films and authenticity.
This gentleman is Leonard Gaines. He appeared in Blue Collar. He was the IRS guy with the leaky pen. And that young lady there is a real porn star, Serena.
Great talent. Action! Movie, let's go.
This was pretty raw stuff, especially in 1979. Don't you think in a lot of ways, the movies have gotten more conservative today? Be more difficult to see a mainstream movie with a big star with a scene like this in it, because agents steer their actors away from these types of really provocative things. This would be unheard of, really, in most you wouldn't see Leonardo DiCaprio or Brad Pitt doing stuff like this today.
Also,
they would be steered away from it.
It's not as much forbidden fruit anymore, because if you have a phone, you can find stuff like this online.
Yeah, but I think a lot of it is also just actors not willing to be associated with films that would be
that's true,
deemed as politically incorrect or exploitive of women. But you can't make a movie like Hardcore without showing this. And this is what it looks like. Porn movies are basically a lot of bored people sitting around waiting for a couple of minutes of action, which is mostly what movie making is all about. It's about waiting. Waiting, which is why, you know, people like Frank Sinatra didn't like numerous takes. Dean Martin didn't like it. Because it's all about waiting. There's a lot of boredom in filmmaking, and that includes, believe it or not, the porn world too. Probably worse for the porn world because you have to be able to perform on a minute's notice.
Yes, he just used a line of dialogue. What do you know? What do you hear? What do you say? Which is a variation of James Cagney in Angels with Dirty Faces.
Right.
He probably is a James Cagney fan, a real movie fan, and this is as close as he's going to get to making movies.
This Andy character, he's not a bad guy, but he's not a good guy either. And he provides a very stark contrast to George C. Scott's character.
He looks like the kind of down in his heels L.A. gumshoe that would actually, you might meet in real life.
Lenny Bruce has a saying that America is great because it does not punish untalented artists. You can make something and call it art.
Right. That's
and Lenny Bruce says, there may be a difference between a big piece of art with a little shit in the middle or a big piece of shit with a little art in the middle. Who are you to judge?
Okay, cut.
And look how Van Dorn is packing. So orderly, so practical.
I'm going out of town for a while. No, I don't know when I'll be back. No, there's nothing wrong. Think you can keep things running?
Perfect casting, these people. Really.
Well, Boyle had a very long career. He had turned into somewhat of a comedy icon after a while, had a long career on TV. What was he on? Everybody Loves
Raymond. He played the father.
I don't watch much TV. I gave up when they canceled The Man from U.N.C.L.E. in '68, but I know he had a long career.
You've got some catching up to do.
I know.
And that church, that choir music keeps coming in a little more off-putting.
It sounds funereal. It just sounds sadder and sadder.
Schrader had said in the making of this that it was based on the Calvinist scenes on his own rather strict upbringing, but he said that he was no fan of pornography, and at the time he made this, claimed he had never actually seen a porn movie and only inserted those sexually charged scenes for the sake of realism.
This is a film about extremes. It's going from one side of the world to the other side. And it just, I take a message from this in moderation that, any form of extreme behavior hurts people because it excludes people or marginalizes them or disenfranchises them. And inclusion is a message.
Hey, I ain't cheated you, Pilgrim.
I like this where he calls him Pilgrim because it seems to be based on The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, John Ford's film, in which John Wayne keeps giving a backhanded slap at the James Stewart Tenderfoot character by constantly calling him Pilgrim.
Not perfect. Get out. Hey, this is my own apartment.
Get out.
All right, you rat prick. Well, go find your own daughter.
He's literally throwing him out of his own apartment.
Fucking door. Hey. Hey.
I really nice little production design, set design touches on this. I always pay attention to those things.
Yeah,
does it really reflect what we think the character would look?
Waiting to see one of those black velvet paintings in the background.
Right.
Or
Well, there's
like
even
that.
there's a nude on the wall.
Yeah.
So showing the way a character lives gives you insight into who the character.
Oh,
and this
sure.
is just completely. These are two polar opposite worlds. And it's just, again, he keeps getting sucked in, and this character Ramada, and this is a turning point for him in the film, because he actually becomes his own investigator.
Schrader does not give us any shocking, wacky montages introducing us to this world. It's just there. In fact, when they're walking, they don't do these crazy Dutch angle shots, X-rated films, porn stars, whatever. It's always tracking shots, dolly shots while they're walking. It's just there in the background. And Schrader makes all this stuff that's supposedly exciting mundane.
Right, that's right. That's a very good point. Well, here we have him, the ultimate stranger in a strange land. He might as well have landed on the moon. One of the casualties of the great video revolution, I guess. Well, from a moralist standpoint, the good news is that thousands and thousands of these porn theaters shut down when video came out. The bad news is that far more pornography is being seen by far more people today because of the technology. So the theaters are largely gone, but those were the go-to places. Did you had a prurient nature in those days?
Did you guys see Boogie Nights?
Yes.
I have not. That's one of the ones that escaped me. I'm hating
because the end of Boogie Nights, it shows you that porn has turned you don't even need good directors. You don't even need a story anymore. It's not. There are no stories really anymore. They're not making high-class, event films.
At Cinema Retro on our website, I'll give a cheap plug, cinemaretro.com, we take the older retro porn movies seriously, and we review them on our sites, because to your point, Paul, before the video came in, there were real production values to some degree to these things. They were shot on film.
Once again, they tried to put art in there.
There was an attempt to put some performances on. Sometimes you saw some real talent in there, some subdued talent.
50-cent admission. It's a 50 cents admission is applicable to a purchase.
There's only two types of men in this world. Men who say they like pornography and men who lie and say they don't, which is why we get so many of these great moralists that always end up in these scandals, mostly people who are like churchmen or preachers or what have you. It's just a male thing. And I've yet to meet a man that, if exposed to it, can honestly say they didn't get some kind of prurient thrill out of it.
What's great here is that George C. Scott makes it embarrassing for us. He makes us embarrassed. He makes us impatient.
Through his eyes.
He makes us impatient to get out of there.
Right.
His body language when he's walking around, hanging around.
When I went to one of the Video Association conferences years ago, and one of the heads of the association said that, and the video industry was actually built and sustained by the pornography industry.
That's why it exploded. And it opened it up to women, too, because women never really wanted to go to some grimy, grindhouse. But once you could bring it into the living room, who knew what you were
this
doing?
was a statistic from 2000 where one of the industry leaders said that 6 million pornography videos were sold last year. And he said it's not 6 people buying a million videos each.
No, and the other thing is, in today's world, of course, we couldn't foresee the internet, PCs, or anything like that. But really, among the few fee-based websites that succeed in the world today, because most people think they should be free, where you actually subscribe, are pornography sites. Now, you can think that's terrible, you can think that's great, but it's also one of the driving factors in the explosion of the internet in the early years, the ability to see these films. And there's things on the internet that are far coarser than anything that would ever be released to a grindhouse theater in those days. I mean, they would have been closed down in 5 minutes. These were an era where, remember, those newspapers used to be all over. They've largely bitten the dust too. But newspapers like that, sexually provocative, you would get them as handouts, or sometimes you'd have to pay for them, and it was all filled with classifieds of women who allegedly wanted to meet you. Screw magazine by Al Goldstein was very evocative and very provocative of that era. It was like a Bible for people that wanted to read about the counterculture.
Welcome to Wild Mary's. I'm Beatrice. Have you been here before?
No.
What we offer here is nude body-to-body contact on a bed in a private room. It's $20 a half hour, $30 an hour. Anything else you may desire may be discussed in the privacy of your room. Tipping's allowed. We accept Bank Americard, Master Charge, American Express.
A little bit of laughter there, I'm sure, in the audience.
There is some humor in this film, which it's very much needed because it's such a depressing.
Have you ever been in a porno film?
Well, that's one of the best line in the movie, I think, is when the Season Hubley character says, "Hey, at least you get to go to heaven. I don't get shit."
You want a session?
No, I don't think so.
You sure? We have regular sessions too. It's only $20.
Oh, sí, señor. Sexo, sí. Sí, señor. Sexo, sí.
Once again, just the dolly shots of just walking
It's
through
very well photographed.
The pacing here is, by today's standards, very slow. But
Well,
it's
that's what
very
I said in the
effective
beginning,
here.
because Schrader's not in any hurry to take us to some big shootout or car chase.
Every place is different, but actually the same.
I mean, what always gets me about this thing is, if he wants to fit in and appeal to this world, walking around in a finely tailored suit, kind of makes him stand out. I'm not sure he wouldn't dress down. He does later on when he takes on an alter ego.
He doesn't get that yet.
See you later, Felice.
Hey, you ever been here before?
No.
What we offer is female wrestling. That is nude body-to-body contact.
You can imagine a guy with his background hearing this. I wonder how they showed this on television. So much nudity. Did they ever show it on network TV? I doubt it. They would have had to have cut it up so terribly that it wouldn't have been worth the effort.
Well, I've never really seen this film or Blue Collar really about.
Fallen into the abyss.
Okay, I'll take a half of it.
Any particular choice of girl?
You'll do fine.
Again, this movie had its defenders at the time, and it also had its detractors. But I think, again, it's probably aged very well. At the time of it, Roger Ebert wrote, "Parts of the movie are autobiographical for me," according to George C. Scott, who he interviewed, "because I come from a pretty religious background. I can understand this guy, the way he feels. I've personally never seen a porno movie or had any desire to. It would be like invading someone's privacy. But I can get into the character's mind. You always flesh out a character, think about his background. It's so much second nature. I don't think much about it anymore. And then it was probably a good idea for Paul to start us out in Michigan to set the mood. We were up to our asses in snow, which certainly succeeded in bringing the whole Midwest back to me."
And it's this whole standard, the entrapment prevention speech.
Yeah, I said earlier it was Schrader that hadn't seen a porn movie up until then. I could have been mistaken. It could have been that quote from Scott. So that's wrong. I apologize. But Schrader did have a very conservative background. And whether this was a rebellion against that background, I don't know. We'll have to listen to what he says.
No, Felice, I'm not a cop. Matter of fact, right now I have less respect for the police than you do. I'm trying to find this girl. She's a runaway. I can't seem to get anybody to help me.
Are you gonna stiff me?
What do you mean?
Look. That $20 you just paid to get in here, I don't get any of that. That goes to the guys that own this place. I get $2 an hour, plus 10% of that goes to a bail fund. I make all my money on tips.
You want a tip?
Sure, I want a tip.
By the way, we're told that Warren Beatty was originally going to play the lead role and was actually attached to the project. But Beatty, who's been known to be very dictatorial in his demands, wanted the script to be rewritten so that the girl who was affected would either be the sister or girlfriend of the hero in the film. And Schrader didn't want any part of that. He had very definite ideas what he wanted to do. So Beatty left the project. At one point, Steve McQueen's name was floated around as having been considering this part, but I'll be honest with you, this would not be suited for Steve McQueen, if that is true.
Or to Warren Beatty, for that matter.
Beatty would want it to be, a different
You would think it
storyline.
would not be for any known popular actor, and yet George C. Scott seems to make it work.
Yeah, this requires a certain gravitas that George C. Scott brings to the role.
Curiously, both this film and Taxi Driver have to do with young girls being drawn into the sex profession, the sex trade, basically being trafficked, and an unlikely moral purist coming through as the savior.
Ocean Tom John 513 1964.
If you guys think back of Taxi Driver, you think of the Jodie Foster character Iris. This movie is about Iris's friend in the film, the one who's not rescued.
Right.
You could
correct.
say
Good way
this
of putting
is
it. You
a
can put it that
different
way. Very
world,
interesting
but this
point.
now he's telling it the story from a different angle, the ones that don't have anybody.
Right. What I like about this is that although Scott was very much known as a man of action, as a leading man in those days, he's not some Superman. He's not taking people out and throwing them over bars and, going in with a crowbar.
And there's a Star
Wars
reference.
yes, Star
Scrounged,
Wars.
Really
yeah.
puts you in the exact time.
Yeah.
I think that was the second
Now,
79.
I'm eating my words because I said before he's walking around now he's getting a bit of being streetwise here and looking a little
This
more.
is the Century City Plaza
Yes.
in L.A., which is very evocative of money and power. And this is a high floor, and you see the views. And you clearly see that pornography has been very, very good to him.
It's been pointed out that the title "hardcore," whether intended or not by Schrader, could be looked at with a dual meaning. Hardcore meaning the obvious definition, the sex films, and the other being hardcore, unwavering religious beliefs.
It's kind of conflating or comparing two intractable positions as being ultimately inappropriate.
Remember that. What do we do in St. Louis?
St. Louis, 38,000.
St. Louis can bang this slowly. Who booked St. Louis?
Hi, I'm Jake DeVries. I'm here to see Mr. Ramona.
Just a moment.
Where's my accountant?
He's got a bad stomach.
He's got a bad stomach. Hello. Yeah, what is it, Georgia?
There's Mr. Freeze here to see you.
I'm Mr. DeFreeze. I don't know what you know what DeFreeze?
I never heard of him.
You ask where he's from. Detroit. What do we do in Detroit?
Detroit?
Come on.
Big. 200,000.
Send them in, Georgia. You never can tell who the fuck knows. Detroit, 200,000. You never can
Got
tell.
a
And
nice
this is where we
presence.
have a little touch of humor in this film. I mean, I think Schrader realized you couldn't have it be so unrelentingly depressing and upsetting that he does introduce some comedic elements such as this.
What Scott's doing isn't quite working. It's not supposed to
No,
work.
it's-
He doesn't know
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
he's a little over the
Yeah,
top
right,
doing it.
Right.
An old-time box office smash there. Little Laurel Annie. Did you see it?
No, I'm afraid of it.
I mean, if anything strains credibility, it's that his instant transformation into this streetwise trash.
Well, the thing is,
talking,
you're right. You can't do it. You can't transform that quickly, and that's what we're seeing. He's doing his best, but I think it's tough for an actor to kind of act badly on purpose.
Yeah, no, you're right.
I have $50,000 that I'm prepared to invest in a suitable project. Now, of course, I may want to get involved in the process of making the film. You know, might meet some of the people who make this kind of film and learn how it's done.
I'm curious, Jake. What business are you in?
I have my own business. We make rivets for the auto industry. We sell to Fisher Body.
Rivets? That sounds like a good, solid American business, right, Kurt?
Right.
And I'm sure that he's been approached before by wealthy businessmen who want to get into the pornography business. He's very comfortable in this medium.
Right. Looks a little like Joey Bishop.
I'll be frank with you, Bill. You know, I've made a lot of money, but, well, even rivets can get a little boring after a while, you know. So when my business manager suggested that I tax shelter some income, I thought of it.
And once again, you talked about promoting on the talk shows. I don't know how this movie was promoted, or even if the stars promoted it.
I don't remember. I think it made money. It was very controversial, but among the people, as I said before, defended it was Roger Ebert, who gave it a very good rating, and saw its merits before a lot of people actually did. I mean, in a way, there were some elements of it that looked like a museum piece in the sense of the technology and how pornography was available in those days. But there's also a timeless quality to it because, if anything, the video revolution exponentially increased the number of people who got involved with the sex trade, whether voluntarily or involuntarily. So this type of thing is probably going on even more today than it was then. Lost souls who have fallen into the belly of the beast, so to speak. The only difference is, in those days, New York and L.A. were the centers of the porn business, L.A. being the most prominent. Almost all the porn films you see from that era were shot in L.A., usually with the really street locations. They had some production values. Today, of course, through video, anywhere can be the center of the porn business, and we now have a lot of it coming out of Asia.
And a lot of it is homegrown.
Right. A lot of it is literally homegrown, where, you know, through these adult websites, you can put anything you want on there. You're not going to make any money from it, but if you're an exhibitionist, it must be paradise. They
do a little bit of a stretch here, but I guess Schrader's trying to push the envelope when the producer says, start small, start with the kiddie porn. Yeah. That stuff is really overseas.
Well, kiddie porn in those days, it was far more accepted. I mean, it was always illegal, technically, but you would see it openly displayed in some of these sleeve shops. And I remember going to Europe in '77, and child pornography was being sold in newsstands in Paris and Rome, you know, next to the daily newspapers and Life magazine or what have you.
Now, blink and you'll miss Ed Begley Jr., folks.
This is Ed Begley Jr. Huh. Interesting point.
Splendid. I guess I go in first class, huh?
Cut!
Is that okay?
What kind of army has a soldier like that?
Brought his own uniform. Let's move in for the close-up. Come on.
They are treating it as a real production.
Well, back in those days, and this is what we say, some people say, why do you review some of these retro porn movies on Cinema Retro? I said, because they had cultural significance at the time, even if you disdain them. And there were attempts to tell a story in a lot of cases and to groom some actual talent. And some of the performances every now and then are surprisingly good.
Are you kidding? 3 days' work. I finished tonight.
The other girls are starting.
She thinks so. What do you do?
I'm with Ramada. We're doing some things together.
Well, next time you talk to him, tell him to put his actresses on.
Paint the grass red. Paint the fuck. Paint the road red.
I don't paint. I just
don't talk that way to me, you cockeyed bastard.
Come on, Nicky, we're ready. Come on, put your wig back on and take your position. Come on. Yeah, we're ready to shoot.
It's nice meeting you.
You're really good, kid.
I mean, you needed some money in those days to do porn because everything was shot on film, and film was always expensive. You know, most of it was shot on 16 mil. But this is very realistic about how porn movies were made. There was always a setup. It didn't just jump straight into the action. These things were shown in theaters, and they were made like feature films. They were feature films.
Yeah,
so,
and you needed distribution. So as long as you could
distribution,
come up with product,
there was some production value. So there was always some attempt to gradually lead you into a story. They rarely started off with the hottest action in the first scene. So that, and a lot of the people involved were not very pleased they were in the porn industry, and they tried to exert their acting skills, such as they were. The people behind the camera, the same thing. Sometimes there was some real talent there, but most of them never got a chance in the legitimate business. That's why a lot of them worked under nom de plumes. I mean, most people didn't take their real names in this industry because, especially behind the scenes, it would basically bar you from ever getting legitimate.
Well, that's why I read that many people in the hooker industry do not want it to become legal. Why? Because I have to give my real name?
Well, that's a very good point. That is a very good point. You'd have to be registered and everyone would know your background. I never thought of that, actually.
Shortly before he passed away in 1994, Dick Sargent publicly proclaimed he was gay and became, in his words, a retroactive role model for gay rights. His last film was a pretty good thriller, Acting on Impulse, where he was in the company of many reliable players of independent film, such as Mary Warrenoff, Cassandra Peterson, you may know her best as Elvira, and Brink Stevens, who yours truly did have the pleasure to work with on one of my low-budget efforts.
Called every LA hotel. The Holiday Inn gave this as a referral number. Your office said you didn't have any business in New York, so I figured you'd come out here.
Leslie, do me a favor, will you?
Again, to the point we've made before in commentaries about the leading man not being classically good-looking. George C. Scott was a presence.
Right, he was striking looking, but he not
wasn't
necessarily handsome in the classical
sense, and not thin, and not he was stocky and powerfully built. But
I think if there's really one glaring difference between the film industry of then and now, aside from special effects, is that people weren't chosen for their looks necessarily in those days. I mean, glamour was always a part of Hollywood, but you could have leading men, especially, who look like this. They weren't pretty boys, and they look like people you would meet and know in real life. And I always say it's because they fell into acting. I mean, most of these guys drifted. They fought in World War II. They didn't know what to do after it. So guys like Scott and Lee Marvin and Charles Bronson, who were not handsome men, ended up drifting into acting. And you just don't see that happen today. They do a market study about how cute the leading man is and how many, how that's going to play in Peoria. And I don't think a guy that looks like Scott or half of these other people we see would ever get major roles.
Well, now the metric is not only how people will play in America, it's how they'll play overseas as well.
That's exactly right.
We're watching a number of the recent blockbusters open in New York and LA a month after they opened.
That's right.
In Hong Kong and in London and in Brussels. And a fellow movie critic said to me recently that New York is now the Cleveland of movie openings. And it's sad in a way, but you see the demographics changing.
Absolutely. It's a different industry today.
Here's the complete transformation, right down to the tie-dye T-shirt.
Well, at the heart of most of these people that drift into the porn business is a desire to actually be in some form of show business. Of course, from a male perspective, part of it is just the lure of getting paid to have sex.
I don't know if it's just a rumor or not. I have read that it was harder to get men than women.
Well, because men have to perform in biological ways that women don't. Women can fake it, men can't. And there is, if you want to call it, I hate to call it a talent, we'll say there's a very unique ability that not many men have to be able to perform on command, which is why you saw the same people over and over and over again. This is funny.
I'm Dick Black. You're doing a porno movie, right?
Right.
Then I'm the man for you.
Well, I'm glad to meet you, Mr. Black, but I'm afraid you're not exactly the type we're looking for.
You mean because I'm black?
No, he's just not the type.
What do you mean, not the type? Man, don't you know who I am? I'm Big Dick Black. I've done more porno movies than you ever saw. I've worked with Harry Reams, Johnny.
Yeah, he's Big Dick Black.
Yeah, the reference to Johnny Wad, a.k.a. John Holmes, who was a ubiquitous presence, probably the most famous porn actor of all time, usually known as Long Johnny Wad. So that line resonated with audiences at the time, because if you weren't into pornography, you probably had heard of John Holmes, a.k.a. Long Johnny Wad, who literally made movies with thousands of women, from 5-minute loops to actual feature films.
I'm afraid you're not exactly the type. We had something a little different in mind.
Don't you want to see my stuff, man?
What stuff?
You know, my stuff.
Yeah, he doesn't say no thank you at this point. He says just show me. And
get
very
this
impressive.
over with.
I imagine maybe this is how these things went. Don't call us, we'll call you.
Who would ever think George would be shot in that angle through pants?
But this is where the story takes a very important turn.
And this sequence, the tension, you start to cut it with a knife. It just gets really heavy.
Because we have to assume that he's done far more of these than we've just seen, so he's physically exhausted. I like the haircuts on the guys at the time. Bobsy Twin. Well,
Prince Valiant.
Yeah, Prince Valiant, yeah.
And I guess they've shown that photograph enough to us, for us to finally recognize it's the guy in the picture.
Yes, this is the famous Jism Jim. And it's kind of the detachment that all these guys have, that they're just kind of, they're not connected to themselves, they're not connected to society.
It's all about, I'm just working. Yeah.
I liked you in this film.
Oh, yeah, I remember that. It was made by some college kids.
It's called Slave of Love?
God, I don't know what it was called. I never even saw it. I only got $25 for the whole goddamn thing.
Well, I liked you. I also liked the girl. Really thought she was good. I was wondering, she's still around? She's still working?
Just wait a minute. I need the work. And I want to be in your picture. But that is one bitch that I will not work with again. That was one freaky bitch, man. I don't know what she was into. I don't know what she was on. I just don't want anything to do with her again, okay? You know what she did to me? My prick was so red and sore and chewed out, I couldn't walk for a goddamn week. Ah!
And here you're
Good
watching
scene.
the rage explode.
Yep.
It's building up for such a long time. Those jeans are amazing.
Yeah, those are some jeans, man. Today, of course, to promote the movie, you'd be able to get your hardcore jeans.
Right.
To tie in with them.
Okay. Don't hit me anymore.
Where's the girl? Where is she?
Oh, my God. His name is Todd.
Where does he hang out?
I don't know, man. I don't know.
Where?
Look, I know this chick named Nikki. She works at La Girl's. She would know. She knows where he lives. Honest.
Star Wars.
If you were to make this story today, like a period piece about the porn industry back then, this is the music you'd use?
Yes.
This is the set you'd use?
Disco. That's a clever thing there, that Star Wars thing, which was all the rage, obviously, around the late 70s. And the porn industry has always been exceptional at exploiting whatever was hot at the time. So, you know, whether it was a spy movie, a space flick, whatever it was, they always capitalized on it.
Yeah, and they gave a lot of credit to people who would take the names of popular movies and
Romancing the Bone, On Golden Blonde,
Forrest Hump.
Yeah,
right. And
Thunderballs.
Here we meet.
And here's that classic setup that you had spoken about before, where you put the money in and the...
Yeah, but the ones they had in Times Square, when I was young, I never spoke to anybody. The window would go up and there would be a naked woman on a stage.
And as we can see, move away. Don't be close when that thing comes down. Wham!
I think it's pretty bold stuff for actresses to do in those days, and that's something you don't see very often today either. Most actresses are not going to do nudity, especially full frontal nudity.
Season is involved heavily with animal rescue today. Yes,
Season Hubley. It's a good performance. Again, sort of, and we can picture this being Iris, from Taxi Driver, to say a few years on, had she not been rescued in Taxi Driver. This is where she would have ended up.
Don't I know you? Weren't you on the set the other night with Ramada?
Yeah.
You making a feature?
Uh-huh. Life's out.
You got any parts? I'm free. I don't really do this.
Jim and I are trying to run down this girl. Do you know her?
I can't see shit without my glasses. Joanne?
You know her?
No. I seen her with Todd.
You know where she lives?
Nah.
You know where she might be found?
Perfect.
Your 3 minutes are up.
Where is she?
Well, Todd might know.
Where's he?
Last I heard, he went to San Diego.
If we went down there, do you think you'd be able to find him?
You're not a film producer, are you?
How much you make a week, Vicky?
You're a private detective?
Something like that. How much you make?
Here? Oh, what a joke. There was some other detective asking about that girl.
300?
This is just temporary. I once made 900 in alcohol.
I'll give you $700 a week cash if you'll help me find this girl.
Up front?
Half now, half later.
Make it 900. That was my best week.
And this is just a world that's all about the money.
Yeah.
Oh, you bet.
Believably written. Again, that's very, very daring for an actress to do.
And we find out that Peter's not out of the picture quite yet.
I don't recognize this deli, but I always look for locations in New York that in L.A. I might have recognized.
It's probably still there in some formation. Sergeant's character is an admirable guy. I mean, clearly, you'd like to think that's what a friend would do.
Right.
And it's also especially somebody who's a man of faith.
Yeah, he's very pure of intent. And once again, we find out that one reason he kind of wants to save George from doing anything really stupid, because he says that he is kind of a loose cannon. He knows him. he could maybe seen him fly off at times or see that anger.
He's still reserved enough, even though he's seen her completely naked with her legs open. He feels compelled to put on a shirt. It's a nice little touch.
And to pay for 2 hotel rooms.
That's right.
What's great about this story, and what's the essence to any good story, is that the characters remain consistent. That whatever they do, it's within the range of expectations.
That's right. Yeah. I think she's very good in this season, Hubley. She never really went on to major stardom, did she?
She had a number of roles in the kind of violent
exploitation films, but she's quite good in this. And at the time, this film was knocked in some quarters, and some of the people involved were nominated for the equivalent of the Raspberry Awards.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, and nobody in this is deserving of it. It's there aren't any bad performances in this film. I think she's especially good. She's very believable.
Well, if you make this type of film for public consumption, you don't know where the line's going to be drawn between what's to the point, what's a little vulgar to some, how far. In screenwriting, it's always best to go a little far than not.
Right.
Don't worry about it. Your daughter's around. We'll find her in a couple of days.
Of course, today, I think one of the things that compromises screenwriting in some regard is technology, because in the old days, reliance on pay phones and file systems and shoe leather added to suspense. In today's world, of course, we know almost everything he'd be doing, he'd still be in Grand Rapids, being far more effective contacting people on the internet than he would be, walking around.
I think you just have to do a little more work to make a story like this work in contemporary times, because somebody can also still drop off the grid.
Well, no, people drop off the grid all the time. I'm simply saying the way to look for them today, a person's time would probably be spent more obviously trying to track people through internet sites.
Oh,
and there's still private detectives, obviously, and the police are still.
You could have offered a reward on social media and just started
Facebook,
tweeting.
my daughter's missing.
Yeah.
I mean, that solves plenty of cases. That show, America's Most Wanted, has an excellent track record of finding criminals.
Well, there's also the thing is there's less locations, venues, no more. Let's do the telegraph scene.
Well, there's a show on today. It's popular on ID Discovery called Disappeared, and it's just about everyday people, to Eddie's point, who just go missing inexplicably. Sometimes the cases are very eerie in nature, where people with no crazy histories and no bad company that they keep just don't come home from work, and sometimes they vanish without a clue. But the first line of defense by the police and everybody else is to go to the internet, because you stand a much greater chance of finding the person. But I think in a way, while that opens up some opportunities for storylines, technology, it closes others. I often think if you look at old movies where people are stuck, well, let's take a favorite of yours and mine, Paul, The Haunting, okay, where people are outside in the British countryside in this rural home, and they get in trouble. Well, today, of course, all you have to do is just pick up a cell phone, and the amount of compromises you have to make to put people in situations where a cell phone isn't available
I'll give you
considerable.
An example.
Oh, one thing. You notice in this scene, he's given this nice little talk about how his religion works. Seems to be the only time, at least so far in the film, he's talking like he's interesting to tell somebody something, like he wants to educate.
Yes,
he seems like he's in his environment.
He's coming to take on a father figure. What were you saying, Eddie, about the...
There was a film, I think 2 years ago, called Gone Girl, about a wife who goes missing. And even in an era, our era now, where you've got all this technology, she was unfindable and presumed dead for a certain point, but the plot was so intricately constructed that it allowed for this kind of story to be told.
No, and this type of scenario goes on every day when the internet fails us. So sometimes old-fashioned shoe leather is just it. But, you have to employ that, go door to door and, knock on doors. But I'm just saying it was not possible to solve a case back then unless you did this. Today it's just another option. But
that's correct.
There's those shirts we wore in the 70s, guys.
They call them huckapoo shirts.
Well, no wonder the 70s is known as the decade that style forgot.
He'll be back in a couple of hours.
Hey, tell him Louise is here. We'll come back later.
You want it?
At the time of this filming, Susan Hubley was married to actor Kurt Russell. This same year, Susan played Priscilla Presley to Kurt's Elvis Presley in the TV movie Elvis. She would later appear with Kurt in Escape from New York. They were divorced a few years later.
Shouldn't eat all that junk anyway. It's no good for you.
At least I'm a growing person, huh?
And you won't keep growing long at this rate.
Don't start coming down on me.
But again, you notice that there's no sets, at least no apparent sets used on this film.
Nothing that looks like sets anyway.
The seedy motels look like he rented a seedy motel, and the offices look like offices.
Well, this was cinema verite of the 70s.
And I always think when I look at shots like this in major cities, it looks simple, but can you imagine the logistics of filming this without having people standing around or gawking at it? It's really an amazing shot that is lost on you when you first see it.
That was also a component of the 70s. I think the best stories come from the French Connection, where they actually shut down the Brooklyn Bridge.
I was thinking
kind
that
of
too.
illegally in order to get a shot.
Well, they did in the movie, the horror film, 28 Days Later. 28 Days Later, I believe. Yeah, and where they needed that great shot on Tower Bridge in London. Well, you couldn't get them to close it down. They went out at dawn and put up fake barriers. Had people telling people, can you imagine today they'd be shot in a minute? But it worked. They had 5 minutes to get some great shots of it empty.
That's pure guerrilla filmmaking.
Neither am I.
That's all you do.
It's not all... Look, how important do you think sex is?
Not very.
Well, then we're just alike. I mean, you think it's so unimportant that you don't even do it. I think it's not important.
Film Scott did around this era, a couple years before, I think in 77, that I thought was also very underrated, was the adaptation of Hemingway's Islands in the Stream. It's a magnificent film. It's a beautiful film, and he is superb in it. He's one of these guys, even if he made a clunker of a movie, he personally never gave a bad performance for be anything less than
he
very
never
commanding.
phoned it in. He was always
never
prepared,
phoned it in. It's a good way of
authentic,
putting it,
and
yeah.
Did pretty good in horror too. In Exorcist 3.
3, not a great movie, but he's good in it. And The Changeling, which is an interesting little horror film, Canadian horror film from 1980. That did it with his then wife, I think Trish Van Devere. He'd been married to Colleen Dewhurst before that.
And
he did a film with Trish Van Devere in 1971. Very good. We talk about, how we like old-fashioned private eye movies and crime films. A movie called The Last Run that he did right after Patton.
Yes.
Very good film. Didn't get much attention at the time, but I would encourage people to look it up and see it. It's very good. He was a very hot-tempered guy. Didn't get along with Kubrick on Strangelove to a certain degree because never liked the fact that Kubrick drove him mad by doing 100 of the same takes, as was his wont. But he always thought that Kubrick was making him look foolish in the film, and that he used his over-the-top takes. Of course, one critic called it the comic performance of the decade, Scott and Dr. Strangelove. But he wasn't always a good judge of how he would look on film, and he didn't care for what he was doing in Strangelove. Whether he changed his mind, I don't know. But he never gave a false performance. He was also never gave up the theater, which people on Broadway.
Which was his first home.
Really, yeah, he started on Broadway. He never gave up on it. I mean, until very late in his career. I remember towards, the end of his career, I mean, going and seeing him on Broadway in a production of Inherit the Wind. And, it was magnificent to see him on stage. A real thrill. But he never turned his back on theater. I mean, he largely got engulfed. For a lot of people knew him, it was because he refused to show up and accept the Oscar for Patton, which was, unheard of in those days. And he said later, I just regret it. I didn't know it was going to become the big international thing I'd become known for. I should have just shown up and accepted the damn thing.
I'll meet you at that bookstore down there at 4 o'clock tomorrow. Okay? I told him you're a specialty customer.
Why can't I meet him now? Nicky? Why can't I meet him now?
He's busy now.
Where does he live?
Hey, listen. I'm risking my ass. We do it my way, okay?
We got everything here, folks. If you're too old, we got seatbelts for you, sir.
If you're too old, we have seatbelts for you.
Yeah.
I haven't for the rest of my life. At least it seems that way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. After a while, they all look the same.
They are the same.
Hey, do you live in a house back in wherever?
Grand Rapids, of course.
Love those shirts.
It's like Jack Lord's garage sale there.
I don't know your daughter, but
This is a good scene, I think, because it humanizes her and him. All she wants is a normal life, and what went wrong? What went wrong with anybody who ends up in that situation, in that business?
your wife isn't dead, is she?
Why do you say that?
It's just a guess. She isn't dead, though, is she? Where is she now?
Back east somewhere, it doesn't matter.
Does your daughter know?
Of course.
Another little 3/4 plot point. We find this out, and then you go, one of those magic times where, as a viewer, you go, "Holy smokes!"
Yeah,
of course.
Yeah.
At the same time, that's when you go, "Oh, it makes sense," but it was a surprise.
I think it's wise that Schrader also avoided another obvious direction and have Scott in some way fall into seduction by this young girl, which
he doesn't take the easy way.
You're almost expecting it to happen at some point, just to get some kind of a hot scene in there or some kind of. But it doesn't happen. He doesn't lose his moral compass in all this.
Yeah. And it would be tough to somehow still root for him, if he did.
Exactly. Yeah.
A similar thing was in the fine film Lost in Translation, where Bill Murray falls for young Scarlett Johansson. He's married, his wife's back home, he's in Japan, and you're just waiting through this whole thing for this inevitable sex scene. And when it doesn't happen, you say, "My God, that's terrific." They had the courage to not go the obvious direction.
At least you get to go to heaven. I don't get shit.
Pilgrim. This is just how you found me once.
What are you doing here?
Look, I feel like such a shit after what I did to you, Pilgrim. Not that I did anything wrong.
It's a little bit of redemption here because now
Yes, I
Peter's
think
character is more. We like him more.
The shape where you damaged his movie career. Well, it's lucky for him no one looks at his face.
Police want to arrest me?
Nah. They don't care about some faggot hustler. They're more interested in your daughter's health. And yours. Like I am.
Sure.
Look, Pilgrim. You're way out on a limb here. You don't know what you're into.
Well, you sure as hell haven't been any help.
Look, I'm sorry about that. Now, what have you found out? You gotta tell me.
Why don't you tell me something for a change?
Like what?
Who's Rattan?
Where did you hear that name?
I just heard. Who is he?
Waiting for him to say Rattan runs a table store on Hollywood Boulevard.
Right.
You know you can buy anything on this earth.
I mean, this is like the equivalent when he says that name, Kaiser Sose.
Well, it's interesting to have, you need a character that everybody's scared about because it also heightens the tension.
Well, yeah.
How are you going to bring this film to, how are you going to bring this story to a logical conclusion? I mean, obviously he's going to find his daughter, but you need to have an element of danger because if he just found her and took her...
This guy that's so scary that even Peter Boyle's character doesn't want to utter his name.
Who, the whore? Ah, she's the victim. I'm a dozen.
You also wouldn't see, to your point, Lee, you wouldn't see a movie today where you would refer to a character as the whore.
Right.
Maybe a political campaign, but not a mainstream movie.
And now it starts to get uglier and uglier, and the colors get deeper. And
good point. Yeah, it gets a little more garish.
And by the time
looking,
I believe he finds Rattan or something, he's literally in hell. I mean, it's lower, as low as you can go.
There's one of those so-called erotic decorations in the background there.
Right.
You know,
there you
people
go.
used to put in their bachelor pads.
And this is the dirty bookshop that's been around since Howard Hawks' The Big Sleep. You know, there was always an understanding
right.
that there was a seedier side of Hollywood. Yeah. But The Big Sleep was 46, and this is decades later. And he's seen those boots before in the movie.
And now, you know, Schrader has to cover all the bases. You know, we've covered the idea of kiddie porn. Now we're going into the world of snuff films.
Right. Which, despite all the urban legends, there really aren't substantiated cases of this. It may be, you know, I'm sure there's been somebody that filmed somebody getting killed somewhere, but in terms, there's certainly never been a theatrical release.
Right.
And a lot of what, in the late 70s, snuff films, there were rumors going around that they were happening all over. They were prevalent in the film industry. And they actually made an exploitation film called Snuff, which got a lot of stupid people into theaters believing they were going to see somebody killed on screen in an R-rated movie. But of course, it was a fictionalized movie about a snuff film.
And I suppose, you know, for the audience here, he had to include it. It was on people's minds, I guess.
Right.
Well, we have to put it into
It was widely believed that these things were prevalent on an underground circuit. But despite people looking back in the day and trying to uncover that part of the porn industry, which was certainly harassed mercilessly by politicians and law enforcement, no one ever came up with evidence of an actual snuff film, at least in America.
And even the T-shirt, I think that's from the movie Flash Gordon, which was very popular at the time. With the Queen soundtrack. Yeah, I remember the urban legends in that era that you had no way of disproving. One of them was which album, if you played backwards, it said Paul McCartney was dead.
Well, yeah, if you on Strawberry Fields, you know, there was all that gibberish at the end of it, but it's very clear that, not to go off on a tangent here, but the Beatles were certainly having some fun with fans because that stuff was more than just a coincidence. Those were definitely some jokes in there. But there were a lot of, you know, we think today we live in a crazy conspiracy world. That's largely due to the internet. But there were always kooky, fringe people that are willing to believe anything. You know, the JFK assassination. Go back to Lincoln, people were believing he was shot by his Secretary of War and orchestrated it.
Well, early deaths of anybody is so upsetting. People think it can't happen. There has to be a Why was this taken away
That's
from me?
right.
It has to be a bigger picture of
you know
people to
what?
be punished.
As Groucho once said, I think it was Groucho, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. And
It was Groucho.
Yeah, and, there isn't always an exotic or titillating answer to things. But certainly conspiracy theories were around in those days, and they did center some of them on the... a lot of things were famous stars appearing in old silent loops. They'd take a still frame of something, pass it around in a magazine, and say that's so-and-so.
And the colors are so saturated here, as I said, we just get lower and lower.
It's almost like sepia tones.
Yeah.
Well, what you say, he's in hell now. This is it. This is the abyss. I mean, it's a very disturbing scene because I would certainly think since the video revolution, somewhere somebody has certainly been filmed being killed.
And it's a prolonged scene now. Now I'm officially watching porn with two other middle-aged men.
Right. A great job of having the film reflected back at Scott.
Yeah. I mean, this is pure exploitation, putting this in, because it's not completely necessary to the plot. I think this is less a social statement than, selling tickets.
Mm-hmm.
What's the matter with your room?
TV's broke.
Yeah? Well, this one's broke too. How about the bed?
Andy Mast is about as far away one could get to being a romantic. If Jake Van Dorn is cold in his world, Andy is more so in his. The idea of being rescued or redeemed is out of the question. His extreme cynicism could be the way he survives his job.
The dude with the big white car? The guy who bought you that ring. I know that boy. He can make life real tough on a working girl. He can get you strung out again. Get you sniffing and snorting.
That's the other dark side about how women got caught up into this industry through drug addiction.
Oh, yeah.
I don't plan on seeing him again anyway.
Oh, no? What are you going to do, get a job? Office temporaries? Computer programmer? Cosmetologist?
Jake will take care of me.
Who? Van Dorn? You gotta be kidding yourself, honey. You think once he finds his daughter, he's gonna think about you? No way, kid. You'll be strictly yesterday's.
There's a great book by actor Frank Langella titled Drop Names. I like the audiobook version because Langella narrates it. And he talks about some of his actor friends that have since passed on and mentions that the key of being a really great film actor is to have a sense of danger. Langella mentions that his good friend Paul Newman did not necessarily have that sense of danger, but that Steve McQueen did, James Dean certainly did, and that George C. Scott did.
My daughter's been missing for 5 months, and I've gone through a lot to try to find out what's happened to her. Now, today, I saw Rattan kill a girl. Now, I'm not going to let this Todd slip through my hands. Now, where is he?
Then you forget about me. It's some bondage house.
We see that Van Dorn can get out of control, and we wonder, is this the first time?
This darkens the character because he could have just as easily said, no, I won't forget about you.
Right.
Because this idea of smacking her and then kissing her
It's all about the conflict.
Look, where are you going? Look, let me take care of this. I don't want you to get hurt. Look, don't do anything till the police get there. Look, you gotta tell me where he's gone. Hello, police. My name is Mass. Get me Joe Klein and Vice.
And as he finds Rattan, they go through this chase and start ripping and just going through fake walls. Like this whole place is phony. The whole thing, the whole world, this whole world of porn is just a bunch of crap. It's not real. It's a facade. It's fake. And you literally, they just go right through it, just ripping through walls.
Again, the hellish.
Yes, it's right.
Lighting.
I mean, he even went downhill to get to the place.
Dominatrixes, people with whips.
Right. I mean, you always hurt the one you love, but this is ridiculous.
and just nothing fun or engaging about it.
Right.
You see it presented in other versions in contemporary shows where it's a sign of affection.
The first five...
I don't know. Nurse Diesel and Harvey Korman in High Anxiety seem to be enjoying.
I mean, the first 5 minutes of the film, this is kind of mundane. Well, we go, here's the opposite end of the spectrum, fellas. This is what you want this either?
Listen, I got another one.
I want my daughter. Her name is Kristen, or Joanne. She's you.
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Police know about Rattan. They know he's here with you. They know everything.
Oh, yeah? Well, goody to them.
Get the fuck out of here.
Tied up in the chair there.
Right.
It wasn't part of the bargain. Yeah, it's a very good scene.
A little bit of Taxi Driver callback there, a little bit. You know, you think you're going through that same scene with Travis.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. In both films, the hero ends up in a den of iniquity.
Right.
Beating some guy up.
Well, it's also part of Schrader's signature of taking these dark characters and watching them sink into the abyss.
Right.
This is a particularly graphic scene, or violent scene.
It's a good setting, too, of that street.
Yeah, just going down
San
and down. And you really think that Peter Boyle better save George C. Scott, because he's really going to get himself in trouble here.
Hey, who the fuck that? El Matador, he goes there.
And there's the bizarre church music again.
Rattan.
immediately
into like
into-
cars.
I get some F. Murray Abraham vibes watching this. A little Scarface.
Yeah, actor's name
It's
is
always
Mark
a
Alamo.
bit difficult when this
Who's a
this
seasoned
villain
character
is somebody you've never seen. You know, it doesn't resonate.
There was no exposition
Right.
before of him hurting other people,
Right.
so we're not as
So he's
invested
just
in his
a
demise.
really nameless, sort of, not nameless, but certainly nondescript person.
Kristen.
Don't hurt me.
The performances in Schrader's Blue Collar are just as good as this film's. Richard Pryor gives, in my opinion, his best performance on film, and possibly Yaphet Kyoto as well. It's a disturbing look at both union and management, implying that neither really cares about your welfare, but they do want control. And the best way to do that is just to keep everyone in their place.
Oh, that's not true. Baby, you didn't believe they took you away. I love you.
Don't touch me, you cocksucker. You never gave a fuck about me before. You didn't. So don't touch me now. I didn't fit into your goddamned world. I wasn't pretty or good enough for you. You never approved of any of my friends. You drove them all away. I'm with people who love me now. You robbed my life.
And that's the classic agony of any parent going through that moment.
I do love you. I just never knew how to show you. It's very difficult for me. Nobody ever taught me.
And here's the indictment of his world, that you're good, you're moral, you want to do the right thing, but you don't know how to communicate affection to your children, which any culture would see as not a good thing.
Please.
You really want me to go?
No.
And this is the moment where you see that the relationship is repairable, that no matter what happened, there's at least room on both sides to move forward. So it has, I was thinking as I watched the ending again, how it should have ended. And there's no way that a film like this could have ended any other way than this.
Well, it certainly wouldn't have been acceptable if going through all that, there was no redemption at the end.
And as you can see, it's alternately happy and sad.
Yes,
because
they've both been through a lot. And he's stabbed, he's bleeding, and he's not even focusing on his own injury.
Alright, come on now. Let's break it up, okay? There's nothing here to see. It's all over. Come on now.
Thinking maybe there's some way I can.
What she wants is something Van Dorn doesn't know how to give, at least just yet.
It's an unsatisfying ending, but it's probably more realistic, you know.
Andy? Think maybe you can do something for him? Maybe money, maybe go home, Governor. There's nothing you can do. You don't belong here.
You're right, Lee. The point, the connection to The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance, James Stewart's Pilgrim character wound up reforming the West, fixing the problem. He was an agent for change, where here this Pilgrim's character is
a pilgrim.
And this is a nice fade out here because they do make it look like the lights are now going out.
Well, thank you for joining us for Paul Schrader's Hardcore. Thanks to Eddie Friedfeld and Paul Scrabo for joining us on this. And thank you to Paul Schrader for making a great film. And check out our website at cinemaretro.com. And Paul, Eddie.
Well, this is Paul Scrabo. Thank you for watching Hardcore with us.
And this is Eddie. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Lee. And thank you for watching.